Just how far would you go to acquire the house of your dreams? Would you beg? Would you borrow? Would you steal the for sale sign off the front lawn? Today you're going to meet a woman who saw this French pavilion house when she was about 13 years old and swore someday it would be hers. You'll hear the story of pure determination coming up next on Dream Living. The story of this house is the story of a young girl's dream. Here in the lush green hills of Pasadena, just a few miles northeast of downtown Los Angeles, a well-to-do society matron built her dream home over a half-century ago. Called a pavillon or pavilion home, this stunning house was modeled after the French country retreats of the aristocracy. It was here a young mother brought her aspiring designer daughter and introduced her to the house that would change her life forever. Hi, I'm Jody Daly and welcome to Dream Living. Today, I think you're gonna have a lot of fun. I know I am. Penny Bianchi saw this house when she was 13 years old with her mom, and she said, you know, Mom, someday I'm going to live in that house. And your mom thought you were crazy, didn't she?
Well, she didn't underestimate me, I must say. She said it wouldn't surprise me.
What, now, you drove up here and it was a friend of the family's that had bought the house?
Yes, a good friend of my parents bought the house, and my mother, knowing that I'd always wanted to be a decorator, wanted to show it to me. And she said, get in the car, I want to show you this house because my friend Marion and Walter bought it and they're going to ruin it. And we came up, we went through the house, and she explained to me how the lady had built it and designed it from this pavilion outside of Paris. And on the way out, I said, I'm so glad you showed me this house, Mommy, because someday I'm going to live here.
Years later, Penny grew up to be one of the most respected designers in the area. And when the house that inspired it all came up for sale, Penny felt the call of destiny.
Once the house was on the market, it had to be sold in probate, which is a difficult, scary way to buy a house.
Rather than risk losing the house to another bidder, Penny launched her own one-woman campaign to acquire the pavilion.
I enlisted my 3 daughters to steal every for sale sign that went up in the front so no one else would know it was for sale. And,
you really did that?
Oh, yes, we did. And I gave a reward to them and their friends, $10 per for sale sign. By the time we went to court, we had 14 William Wilson signs in our garage. And I figured they'd stop pretty soon because they were very expensive signs.
When Penny and her husband Adam went to bid on the house in probate court, no one had come to bid against them. At last, the pavilion nestled in the arroyo, or dry riverbed, was theirs.
When we got the house in court that afternoon, we dropped them all off at my real estate agent's house in the front yard. And she said, I knew the whole time it was you doing that.
It's no wonder Penny Bianchi was in love at first sight when she saw this house. The house overlooks some of the most beautiful scenery in Los Angeles, including the world-famous Rose Bowl. With a breathtaking view of the San Gabriel Mountains, this pavilion stood out even in a neighborhood of stunning homes. But putting in the winning bid on this house was only the first step in realizing Penny's dream of recreating the magic of Paris in Pasadena. That's a little kumquats on the door. Oh, this is great. Now, let me ask you what the French pavilion style is.
Well, the pavilions were where the royalty used to play with their mistresses. And they'd have their castles, and then they would have these little things out in the countryside that had very large rooms for entertaining and just usually one bedroom, where their mistresses, Madame du Barry or Marie Antoinette, whoever it was, and that was basically what they were for. They were entertaining pavilions.
The first pavilion was built by Louis XV for his mistress Madame de Pompadour in the middle of the lavish gardens in Versailles. Dubbed the Petit Trianon, it was here he could get away from the pomp and formality of court life and be close to the 2 things he loved the most, his mistress and the gardens. Pavilions were places of smaller parties and intimate trysts, and the large formal living and dining rooms were complemented by equally luxurious bedroom suites. As we see in Penny's home, even though these garden homes were intimate, they were by no means Spartan. The rooms are meant to be light, sparkling, and extravagant, full of all the little indulgences royalty and their mistresses needed to have. The oversized foyer is a distinctive feature of the Pavillon house. Elegant and spacious, the entry functions as the hub of the house. From the foyer, there are doors to all three wings of the home. But the magnificent home we see now wasn't always this light and elegant. The passing years had taken its toll, and the previous interior decorating hadn't aged well.
The whole thing was sort of painted that drab, what we used to call in the 50s hospital green, and then kind of a dark flesh color.
Really?
And there really wasn't, although the house had tremendous natural light, none of it had been, taken advantage of. It had very, very heavy, dark green, thick, rotted draperies hanging on the windows, and which I would run in.
I love your
close.
adjectives. Thick, flesh-like,
Yeah.
dark, rotted. I mean,
Well,
you're really painting a picture for us. Okay.
Yeah, it was very dark and depressing.
This exquisite Pasadena home is an identical replica of the French Pavillon house outside of Paris. Designer Penny Bianchi's mission since she was a teenager has been to resurrect this once run-down gem to its original vision of light. Penny knew that to truly revive this hidden beauty, she would have to create an interior that would be bright and expansive. Like its inspiration in France, this house needed to have a flair for marrying the indoors to the outdoors. And here in the heart of the Pavillon house, she has succeeded brilliantly. The living room is at once both elegant and inviting. The picture window looks out over a C-shaped terrace that embraces the house and the arroyo beyond.
Well, we definitely got rid of all the curtains and all the rugs and all the dingy, dark stuff, and I was very lucky to have these young girls who did the sky on the ceiling and the glazing on all the walls. All the walls are glazed.
The ceiling is done in trompe-l'oeil, a French phrase meaning to deceive the eye, and was common in houses of the time. Marbleizing is another version of trompe-l'oeil. The paint is applied the old-fashioned way, with a feather, to trick the eye into seeing marble when really there's only wood. Of all of Penny's heirlooms, some of her most treasured are the collection of Vertay's paintings. Her mother began collecting the Hungarian painter Marcel Vertay's when Penny was young because the girls he painted reminded her of Penny as a teenager.
This house was on a fundraising tour once to raise money for the symphony. And I pretended I was a guest and just kept circling through the house listening to what all the people were saying about my house.
You toured your own
Incognito, incognito, the whole 2 days. It was so much fun. But I was standing right here behind a gentleman who pointed to this nude painting and said, "That's Mrs. Bianchi."
Meaning you?
Meaning me. And I was quite startled. And his wife said, "How do you know?" And he said, "I know her and I know the whole story. That's her. Imagine having a nude painting in your own living room. Unbelievable." And off he went into the dining room. I was very amused. And the little docent from the symphony was all she could do not to just burst out laughing.
Penny attributes her admiration for French design to her mother, who was a shrewd collector of antiques even when it wasn't fashionable. Much of the furniture Penny grew up with now graces her own living room. The sofas and chairs in the room have been recovered in recent years, and their classic design helps them withstand the tests of time. Penny is also an avid collector of antique fabrics, and on her own shopping sprees in Europe, she often brings home odds and ends of unique or exotic fabrics to create authentic accents in her home.
These are an antique French fabric, and this is a Venetian
I love that
pillow. That's your favorite.
I love that pillow. That is, there's something about that pillow. There's so many different textures in it and everything.
It's a beautiful, that's hand-pressed velvet that they still do in Venice the way they have for hundreds of years.
Now, is this different pieces, or is it just...
No, it's one piece, and it's all hand-painted and stamped, and that's the Lion of Venice.
Ah.
We're particular fans of Venice.
These consoles that stand under the mirrors by the entrance to the dining room are true antique finds. The original builder of the house brought them from Paris.